Hello, everybody. Chuck here. We are about to go and take our next iteration on the Pages tool from Adrian. Adrian, I don't think we've got this in a branch yet, do we? Because it's not that done. It's not even, doesn't just say hello world, right?
No, it's in my branch. I've got it in a branch on my repo.
Okay.
So
it'd be fun if by the end of this next 30 minutes that we could have it in a branch that the world could look at and at least have a thing where it said, hello world. So
I'll try and achieve that then.
Okay. So why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
I think you need to enable it, I think.
Oh yeah, that would make a difference. Make you co-host. Boom. And Adrian, by the way, if I'm not here, like next week, I won't be here. But anybody from U of M should be able to run it. So Zhao and Roger have power, I believe.
Right.
Zhao, you can hover over Mark and make him a co-host, right? And Roger. I'm just asking to hover and check. Oh, Mark, yeah, Mark won't be here. Okay, well, I think I made it so Roger and Joe are co-owners of this. Okay, fire away, or Adrian, I'll be quiet.
Okay, right. So a quick recap. The last time we looked at this stuff, right, we basically copied the conversations tool code into a new tool called Pages, right, which we've got here. Then we went into the code, we had a look around inside it, we made the decision to just focus on, the kind of web app bit, right, and get that working first, yeah. So you're still seeing things like the API and the impler and the tool in here. I'm now just going to get rid of those for now, right? We can bring those back later on, right? So let's just get rid of it. It's gone, right? Look at the POM. Take those out for now, right? So if everybody remembers rightly, right, you've got your modules in here, right? This is a kind of top level POM in a Sakai tool. We're using the multi-modular kind of approach for our Maven POMs. At the moment, we're just doing the tool. So there you go. You just see tool in there. Just save that. Okay, so if we go into tool, I will give you a quick guided tour of what is in here, right? I think we've looked at the POM. We've looked at the POM before. I'll have another quick look at it. Parent is pages-based POM. That's our artifact ID. That's the thing that's going to go into our local Maven repo. And that is what the actual WAR file is going to be called at the end, right? It's going to be called Sakai pages tool.war, right? Okay. Just check that I have not left the API in here as a dependency. That will break things. If you look down here, you'll see all the stuff that we're going to use in this tool, right? So we're using a thing called TimeLeaf, which is a templating engine that works with Spring. More about that later. This other stuff is like just kind of support libraries for TimeLeaf, yeah. Making it work with things like Java instance and stuff, and like the kind of local date time stuff and all the things that are in since Java 8. You don't have to worry about that. I mean, again, we've copied this stuff in for a reason, right? From another tool. We've copied this stuff in for a reason. And we don't have to think about it for now, right? We want to get something built and then, trim out some of these things later. That's the way I work, I'm not dumbing things down for people. I can seldom remember, how to actually start a tool totally from scratch. I'd have to actually sit back and think about that. So I usually copy a tool and I start from that point, and that's where I started with conversations. Okay, right, cool. So that's our POM file. So if we go into the source tree, we've got our standard kind of Maven, kind of hierarchy, site hierarchy. You've got main. Under that, we've got Java and web app. Start off with web app. So under this, when you're building a Sakai tool, again, we're using the standard Maven structure for things, right? So we've got a web app. Under that, we've got the WebMv. In here, you'll see we've got a web XML. So I'm going to show you this, and I'll tell you why I'm showing you this in a second, right? So in our web XML, normally, if you were writing a Java servlet, like the old, the old school servlet, you'd see stuff in here, right? But lo and behold, we have pretty much nothing in here, right? That's all we've got, right? It's empty. And that is because we're using Java configuration for our web application here. So we're doing all the config in Java. We're not doing it in XML, which is a good thing. So web XML, there's nothing in it. But you still need it there, right? It's part of the spec, right? You need a web XML, otherwise Tomcat will complain about it when you deploy it. So we have to have a web XML, but it's just empty. Nothing in there. Right. There's nothing else to see in there really for the moment. Okay, let's go into our Java directory. So in here, this is how we namespace things in Sakai, right? So top level, so we're using the usual DNS approach for namespacing code. Org, Sakai project, stuff underneath. I'll go into that first. And I'll pause just so everybody's okay. So we're inside org Sakai project. At the moment, because I've copied all this stuff from conversations, obviously we've got conversations in here, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move that, and I'm going to call it pages. All right, so conversations is now pages. So we've got org, Sakai project, pages in here, tool. So this is a convention I use when I'm working on Sakai stuff, right? Under the tool project, I'll go org, Sakai project, pages or conversations, whether /tool, right? And I'll put the Java code in there. If it was the API module, it'd be org Sakai project pages /API / the code, right? That kind of thing. That's, I mean, there's no hard and fast rules about it, but I think it's clearer when you actually put, API tool or import actually in your folder, hierarchy. I just think it makes the code a little bit clearer the way, the places you've put it.
Well, it means that it means your package names inside your Java code include that, right? And so
Yeah,
the top level word tool, Sakai pages tool, that doesn't show up in your package name, and it just keeps your package space a little more hierarchical when you're, because the last part of this org Sakai project pages is going to become the package name in your Java code.
Exactly. And if we remember our conversation about class loaders, right? Like the tool code goes into the web application, right? The API code will go into Tomcat lib. So at the moment, things are in separate class loaders. So technically, you could use the same package names and it wouldn't be confusing at all. You could just use one package name, or Sakai project pages, and a lot of code dropped into it, right? But if we take this step now by using tool, API, or impler in our package names, it'll make life in the future easier if we want to start kind of like mushing a lot of these.
I also like it. I also like this convention if I'm just digging through a jar or a WAR file. And I'm like, if I'm looking in a jar file and I don't expect any impls in there, and I see an impl, because the package name is what you see when you're going through a jar file. And so if I'm in like I'm looking in Tomcat lib, and I'm doing a jar TFV on a jar file, and I see a bunch of impls in there, org Sakai project pages impl. I'm like, wait, quite. And so it's nice to have the package names similarly. So the word tool appears twice in the path, but it only appears once in the package.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so if we go into tool now, we'll see all the conversation stuff. So I'm just going to rename these now. Well, okay. These three files that you see here, right? The first one, the configuration, and the last one there that you see, conversations WebMVC configuration. those are effectively the replacements for your web.xml config, right? So all the kind of XML stuff you pour into your web.xml, that stuff is now encapsulated in these two files, the ones that end in configuration, right? So I'm just gonna read now. So again, if you were writing a new tool, you'd be doing something similar to this, right? You'd probably copy something that you knew was working and you understood a little bit, and you'd go through and you'd convert it to do what you want it to do. So you'd rename things. So me doing this, hopefully, is a taste of kind of real world Sakai development. So I'm going to change that to
No pages. No pages.
no, it's all right, man.
Oh, you're
It's
just.
all
Oh,
right.
I see what you're doing. Never mind. I see what you're doing.
Good spot though, right? Okay, so
You don't want to make a typo.
no. And I'll do the last one as well, right? I'll do the MVC one because those are the ones we're going to look at.
You're copying it or moving it?
I'm moving it. Sorry, yeah, moving it.
Yeah, we can fix that in a sec.
Yeah,
Just
so
do a move.
no, I'll move it now. Pages. Right.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Which of these two sets up unit testing? Because I thought one of these sets up unit testing.
No.
Okay, that's definitely.
Neither of these set up unit tests.
Okay, we'll get there when we get there.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. You do see a configuration file for the unit test. It ends in configuration, right? But yeah, we'll get around to that.
So this is really just for the web app.
This is all for the web app. This is literally, this stuff in here is literally your web.xml in Java. You know, I'll move the conversations controller as well to pages controller. And okay, so if we start with pages configuration. Okay, so we've got package names, right? We've got conversations. I mean, I could have cleaned these things up before this session, right? But then you wouldn't be seeing the real world development of this. You know, I mean, I feel like this is kind of wasting our time a little bit, me showing you
It's
this.
not wasting our time. It is not wasting. I don't think it's wasting our time at all.
Right. So I'm going to replace conversations with pages with the power of Vim. There you go.
My SI 364 and SI 364 and 664 would love to watch this right now because we're always changing stuff. I mean, we're always copying stuff and changing stuff. It's so like.
I'm going to do the same with string conversations. That is now pages, right? So there we go. Okay, so at the top we've got our package name, Sakai project pages tool. We've got stuff that the conversations tool needed. We may not need all these things, but we'll leave them here for now, right? I think we probably will need these things. Now this is right. So this is your web.xml really. This is mainly here, right? Okay, so what happens with this? This class here, web application initializer. If you look up here, this is a Spring Framework class, right? So when you implement this, and this gets loaded into a class loader, Spring scans the classes that you've just loaded in, right? And it'll look for this web application initializer as part of its startup, right? And when it finds a class that implements this stuff, it'll go through and it'll run these things, right?
So these are very Sakai specific. This is like and it doesn't look like we're going to have to change anything other than what you've already changed here, right? Just kind of foreshadow.
Oh, we don't know. Yeah.
I mean, this is not something that people derive. Like you said, it would take you some time to sit down and rederive this if you didn't already have this copied from conversations. And mostly this just is pro forma. It's really important stuff. It's really Sakai specific stuff, but it doesn't change much.
Yeah, and when you initially start working on something, you don't have to stress about this stuff too much, right? You do what I've done, right? You copy a tool in, you go through, you change a few things, look through the stuff, look for anything you've missed. It's probably going to be fine. Yeah, by all means, go away and read the docs for this stuff, like maybe that one, web application initializer. I mean, I could do with refreshing my knowledge on the docs for these things, right? By all means, but you don't need to when you first start developing these things. You just don't, okay? We'll talk about what these things mean. We'll talk about them now, but as you see that there, right? That's the file we're going to look at in a minute, okay? We'll talk about that in a second though, yeah? Right, okay. So let's start off with this thing. Servlet context, add listener, tool listener. So if you're in WebXML kind of land, right, you'd have a listener against your servlet, like a listener tag, right? And you'd include this in that place, right? So again, all this is doing, this is just Java configuration. You may have all seen this stuff. You may have all been natives about this stuff already, right? But to me, this is still cool stuff because I'm from the WebXML world already for years. So we're adding our tool list now. So this is a Sakai thing, right? It's up here. So when you have one of these, basically Sakai is aware when you have started up a tool, right? So you add a tool, you build the WAR file, Tomcat picks up your WAR file, it expands the WAR file, all this stuff fires up, right? This gets added, and then Sakai via this line here, right? Well, these two lines, in fact, is made aware. Sakai is made aware. All the rest of the Sakai code, like the Spring stuff in Sakai, is made aware that you have just added a new tool, and the tool gets registered in Sakai. And I think most of the people on this call have done QA stuff, right? So you've got your tool list in site info, right? You've got your tool list. This line here, this is what adds your tool to that tool list, okay? This next line here, this is more about the Spring context. I won't go into that. It's just how the rest of Sakai is made aware of the libraries, the kind of classes that you've got, the components that you've got in your stuff, right? But you don't have to worry about it. This is the crucial one, though, right? This is the one to think about, this tool listener, right? This is how you add a tool. This is how the tool appears in the tool list in site info. Going down, we've got this big beast here, right? This is the big beast of Sakai, right? So the request filter, it's in the kernel in Sakai. It's part of the kernel project. This is the filter that actually does all of our authn for us, basically. Any requests that come into this tool, because you've added this filter here, right? Again, it's just like in WebXML, yeah? Any requests that come into this tool will go through the request filter. And the request filter will look for our Sakai cookie, right, in that request. And it will set up stuff, right? It'll set up authentication, it'll set up the current site that you're in, it'll do various things for us, right? So we've got some state already when we get into our tool code, and the request filter does that for us. So these are very important parts. Again, you're gonna copy this stuff, right? You're gonna copy this stuff anyway, right? So when you do the search and replace like I just did, you're probably going to be good to go after that, right? But these are the important parts. If you go and delete this line, you're not going to have a tool, right? The web app will start, right? And you look in your web apps folder in Tomcat, you go, oh yeah, it's cool, it's there, right? Because it'll be there and expanded, but Sakai won't know anything about the tool. It just won't exist because this line has not been added. I don't need to talk about that anymore. I think you've all got that now, right? Yeah, request filter, that sets up our authn, it kind of maintains our cookie, our kind of session cookie and things, very important.
So one of the things to sort of mention about request filter, it's one of the lowest level bits of Sakai. It's kind of like close to the machine language. And when you go to /portal, if you look at all the tools, you don't go straight to the URL of the web app. You go to /portal/something/something, and then the portal forwards the request to the proper servlet. And the portal sets up things and then forwards the request, and then request filter gets all the stuff from portal, and then presets a lot of your APIs. So if you go do like, what's the current session? who's logged in right now. You don't have to kind of separately establish that. Request filter is kind of establishing it's received. The portal is a web app that then forwards to this web app, adds a bunch of data to the request, and the request filter like takes all that data off and provisions APIs, if that makes any sense. And again, you don't have to change this, but if you don't have it, the portal's going to send a bunch of stuff to your servlet and there's nothing to receive it, and your code won't work. You'll be like, who's currently logged in? Then the answer is, we don't know, because there was no request filter, right? And so when you're starting to look in the code of request filter, it's kind of like you're looking at the primal forces of nature, like the moment of the Big Bang. The request filter is kind of like along with the other two things above, are the thing that takes a servlet sitting at a URL in Tomcat and turns it into a Sakai tool.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, those three things there, right? Tool listener, context loader listener, and request filter. That's the source. That's the source, Sakai source. Okay, so going back down to the bottom, you'll just see, standard web XML stuff. That's the servlet name that you'd have in your servlet. I can't remember what the tag's called. It's been so long. That's the mapping. So anything under, the pages tool is going to come to this tool basically.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
That string Sakai.pages, is that the tool registration? Is that going to be the name of the tool in, not really site info, but administer site? Didn't we used to have a thing called tool.xml for that or something like that?
We do, and we still need that as well.
So this alone is not in effect determining the name of this tool in Sakai's list of tools.
No, but it has to match.
It has to match. Okay.
It has to match. Yeah, it does. Yeah. And also I'll
we'll see that in a bit. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So that'll do for that, I think. So if we just come out, so I'll save that. I don't think I've saved that yet. I'll save that out. We could probably have I'll show you the config. I'll show you the WebMVC configuration now. I mean, this is going to eat our time up, right? But this is important stuff that we need to kind of go through.
So we get into your search and replaces.
Yeah. Search and replace. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll do that now. So I'll get rid of that. And okay, good stuff.
At least we're looking. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got pages tool. Yeah, everything's looking okay. All this stuff here, right, is all of the time leaf and WebMVC stuff. So a little bit of explanation, right? We are using, and we recommend now, across the Sakai board, that any new developments, we use something called Spring WebMVC, right? WebMVC is like an action-based web controller approach to serving up content and functionality. Underneath, it's just a servlet, right? That's what Spring deals with, all that thing for you. It adds this nice kind of layer on top, right, where things act as action-based controllers. Underneath, it's servlet technology. All this stuff is what you need to get Spring MVC working. Again, you don't have to worry about this initially. If you get a working tool and you've copied this stuff in, it's going to work. What we're trying to do is just get to the point where we render something, right? And we can go back and worry about this stuff later.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Those imports that you're looking at right now,
there's
no conversation service or anything in here, because really all you're setting up is the environment that kind of wraps around the MVC code itself. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. That's exactly what we're doing, right? Okay. Although this is boilerplate, you would call it,
like, again, most of this is still boilerplate as long as we're using time leaf. It's not like as you're developing and adding new things to your actual MVC, new routes, you don't have to come back and change this thing much, right?
No, you don't. No, you don't. I mean, no. If sometimes you get fiddly edge cases where you're trying to render, you're doing like a REST controller, right? And you're trying to render a date out, and like you're using an instance and you get
Yeah,
strange
you'll be adding some cool thing to your time leaf and realize you need to add another module to your time leaf.
Yeah,
This comes in here,
yeah, exactly.
some
So
cool
yeah,
widget that time leaf is, a time leaf computation engine or something but this is sort of creating the world outside of your MVC controller. Go. Okay.
yeah. This is setting up the environment for your controller to live in, basically. That's what this is doing. And again, the end result after all this stuff, the thing that Spring produces underneath is a servlet, with loads of like implementation code in it for handling these things, the kind of paths and things that you send in, and that's all done by Spring based on this stuff. So if you look down, right, first, do you need to think about this stuff too much? You probably don't, right? You probably don't. This is probably the most important thing here, this method here, right? Template resolver, yeah? Now, as you can see, what I've done here is I've set the prefix for the template resolver to be WebInv templates, because that's where I'm going to put my templates. You could change that to anything you wanted. But I think WebInv templates is a good one, but it can be something else if you want, right? That's where you configure this. And I'm also saying that I'm going to call my templates .html files, because then when you open them in your kind of editor, they're HTML files. You could in theory, you could call them .eggs or whatever, right? You know what I mean, or .chickens or something, yeah. As long as that says HTML there, you could put some stupid suffix on. Well, why would you? I don't know. So you probably just leave this exactly as it is from the tool you've copied it from. Again, in this case, conversations. This stuff, you'd leave that alone. You won't touch any of that. That thing there, we can talk about that later. Right? Again, we're going back to Java 8 instance and the way they are converted into JSON and things. Right? It's in the weeds a little bit. You don't have to think about this stuff too much. I'm just giving you the quick whistle stop tour. Yeah. We're nearly out of time, so I'm going to point this out. Right. This is really important stuff, right? You see this here, lombok.setter, right? So if nobody is aware of Lombok is worth a quick read up, the Lombok project, right? Because what this setter does basically, this basically, I'm even using it. I don't think I'm even using it here. Am I using it? No, I'm not. That's funny. Okay,
Yes, you are right there.
I am. Well, once.
Yeah,
once,
you got
right, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. So basically, what that annotation does there, and that's what that is, right? Lombok.setter is what we call it. It's a Java annotation, right? It's like a decorator in Python or whatever, right? Type thing. Yeah. What this is basically doing is it sets up, setters for this, right? It'll just add a setter, so you don't have to go public, application context, get application context, any of that stuff, right? Or set application context. Lombok will do it for you. Lombok has got a lot of stuff in it. The Lombok project has got a lot of stuff. It'll create default constructors for you. It'll create. It's massive. So it's worth everybody on the call today. It's worth you going having a look at the Lombok project. I'm not sure what the URL is at this second, but if you just Google Java Lombok, you'll find out, and it is worth going having a read, because we use that all over Sakai now, and it's great. It takes a lot of boilerplate.
Yeah, and Lombok is really used all over Java. I mean, the Java world, I'm surprised that like Java 12 or 11 didn't just make Lombok part of Java. I don't quite understand why the whole Java community leaves this out. Perhaps because it just works so well. But one of these days, Lombok is going to be, I mean, really, there's, if I had to make, instead of one line of application context, if I had to add to that plus documentation, let's just say 35 lines of setter, getter, and documentation, then I would hate Java, right? I mean, that would be, without Lombok, that would be enough for me to say, let's write this in some other language other than Java. But with Lombok, Java becomes like not annoying and everyone uses it. And that's why
Yeah.
it should just be part of Java.
Exactly.
So,
I agree.
yeah. So let's wrap up, Adrian, on time. And then in our next iteration, we'll go into that WebMvcController and do your 2% S conversions. And we're getting closer and closer all the time to hello world. Okay, so I'm going to turn off recording and then see if there's any last minute questions. Stop recording. Stop recording.